Hey, welcome back to another dispatch from Hollie McKay. Today we're going to go back to Afghanistan, and we're going to look at natural resources. Hollie, what's going on with natural resources in Afghanistan?
Well, here's something interesting, Dennis. So, really, when we've been looking at Afghanistan over the past sort of 2 decades of war, there's been a lot of talk about the precious stones that Afghanistan has, and even the copper that Afghanistan has. But really, one thing that's been overlooked, I think, is the coal that Afghanistan has. And it has coal in several provinces and very superior quality coal. And also, it's very close to the surface. So it doesn't require sort of elaborate underground mines and things to extract it. And of course, with the war in Ukraine and energy crisis, coal is in big demand now. And Taliban is very aware of that. And it's something that they're sort of putting a lot of their budget, the budget that they're spending on the country is really coming from this revenue. And so I found that to be just a really interesting topic to look at. But what I did find is that the coal would come from Bamiyan or these different provinces to Kabul, where these private companies sort of work. But then I believe more than 90% of it is then shipped to Pakistan. And from there it's packed, and then Pakistan sort of sells it to China and onto other parts of Asia and Europe. So Afghans really aren't sort of reaping the benefits themselves, despite sort of electricity and fuel being a real challenge in Afghanistan. So while the money's coming in, Afghans themselves aren't actually benefiting from an electricity point of view.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so follow-up question to that. Is it really uh, the middlemen that are making most of the money in this, or is the Taliban government actually benefiting from the export of coal?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. Obviously, the Taliban as a government certainly gets its cut, but private companies, are continuing to kind of work. And it was interesting because one thing I sort of asked them, had there been any change since the Taliban came to power? Was there any sort of difference in how they were able to run their businesses? And the answer was really no. That obviously that they did say tariffs were a little bit higher now under the Taliban than previously, but other than that, they've sort of been left alone to kind of do their work, which is again interesting. And I met with the spokesperson for the Ministry of Mines, the Taliban spokesperson, and what I found also interesting in that was just how very, very aware the Taliban is in about its natural resources, whether that be copper, whether that be uranium, whether that be just the coal. They're very, very tapped in and very aware of it, and they sort of have this sort of almost PR facade where they were trying to sort of get the message out that all foreign companies were welcome, including Americans, who they said were their enemy and killed them, but yet they were willing to sort of welcome American companies into Afghanistan because the Taliban doesn't, itself, it doesn't have kind of the resources that it needs. It's never developed its mining sector. I mean, it's been, back in the Soviet times when the Russians controlled Afghanistan, they were very aware of the resources then. There were tons of studies done throughout the 1970s. But since then, nothing has sort of been developed from it. And that's really in large part to being in this sort of constant state of war and the security situation. But now that the Taliban is in control, they're wanting to be the first to kind of tap into it, but they don't really have the skills and the resources and things necessary. So they are reliant on private companies, and they are reliant on other companies kind of coming in to work with them. And they say that their mandate is for any company coming in is that they have to have an Afghan partner. So any company, whether it be China or Iran or whoever comes in, has to work with an Afghan. And I think the Taliban sort of sees that as their way forward.
Oh, very good. Well, that's a interesting change in terms of it's actually an artifact of peace coming to the land. So very good. And we will talk to you again soon.
Yes, please read the article. There's lots of kind of interesting insight from people on different sides of the spectrum in the mining industry there. But definitely watch that space because I think it is something that is going to be a significant factor for better or for worse going forward.
Well, thank you.